Welcome to the Flying Trout Podcast, a show about fly fishing, wild places, and the pursuit of something just beneath the surface. I'm your host, Braden Evans, and I wanted to thank you for joining me for our very first episode. I've always been passionate about fly fishing, and about a year ago I started writing articles and posted them on a website. And since then I've realized just how much I love sharing these stories and experiences with others. So I wanted to bring them to a new format, something easy to consume, easy to find, easy to listen to. And so here we are, the Flying Trout Podcast. My hope is to bring you along for my experiences on the water through stories, reflections, and maybe even just a few tips and tricks along the way. We'll discover that the pursuit of these fish takes us to wild places, to unexpected moments, maybe even something deeper than just fishing. So today I just wanted to start simple with the very first article I ever posted on Flying Trout. It's not a how-to, it's not about numbers or about how to catch more fish or bigger fish. It's just something that came to me after, a long time standing in rivers, untangling leaders, and noticing that there's just a lot more to this game than just fishing. So there's a phrase that keeps coming back to me, and it's really where this story begins. So let me read you something that I wrote, and then we'll unpack it together. This article is called "There's Something About a Trout," and I posted it just over a year ago, at the beginning of last year, and it's really important to me. It's really special to me. There's something about a trout, something that forces us, pushes us out there like no other fish species seems to on such a large scale. That's not to say I don't enjoy catching bass on a lure or even carp in some city pond, but neither of these experiences equates even remotely to that of fishing for wild trout. Wild trout have pushed me to see a world most only guess at, a world right out their back doors, and yet as foreign to them as some realm of the fae. I am fortunate enough to have seen and experienced some of the most amazing natural landscapes. I have seen the sun rise over desert cliffs concealing the river below, a place where the colors of the rising sun cast a God-willed image of watercolor across the cool morning sky, reflected in the moving water swirling and stirring all around me. I have watched as bighorn sheep battle high above my head, their horns crashing into each other, sending a great crack, ripping through the valley around me as my fly line floats lazily in front of me, attempting to dead drift the fly. I have stalked a moose drinking solemnly from the cool fall river water as the leaves cascade from the trees overhead, beckoning the changing of the season, all the time waiting for a trout to strike. There is something about a trout, their allure and mystery, the challenge of catching, tricking a trout to strike, to rise to a floating fly silently through chilly water. This has driven me to new places, new experiences, things I may never have seen had I not been bitten by this trout bug. I know not everyone may see this the way I do. Not everyone has been blessed enough to hold one of these speckled beauties, hands dripping, standing in a cool river, while nature exists all around you. Not simply an observer to some wild place, but an active participant in the landscape all around us. And so I know not everyone will understand what I mean when I say there is something about a trout. Every time I read that last line, I still feel it. And I think there's a quiet truth in there. That fishing doesn't just take you to rivers. It takes you into these moments. It demands your full attention, and in return, it offers up sights and memories that are just unforgettable. Like that moose that really happened. That wasn't just something I wrote in an article. I was fishing one morning, and it was pretty early. Sun hadn't quite come up yet, and I just looked up, and out of nowhere, I just saw this huge animal right across the river, and I froze. I didn't know what to do. I was slightly scared, and there I was standing mid-river, like who knows if this moose is just going to charge me or whatever. But I was also just stricken by the pure beauty and the pure awe of just seeing something so wild, so peaceful, and totally unexpected. And you can really only find that out there. So that's what I mean when I, say fly fishing makes you a participant. You're not just a visitor. A lot of times when I, would go out and just cast lures into a lake or whatever, I felt like an observer. I'm sitting on the outside on the banks, and I'm sitting there and I'm casting this line in and pulling it out. But when I'm fly fishing, I am boots on, waders on, in the thick of it, and it just makes me feel like such a part of the system, and it makes me feel so connected. And I think that's what makes this whole game really, really special. And so this article, I hold it so close to my heart because I think it captures exactly what I hope flying trout to become, what I hope it'll grow into. Not just a place where we talk about big fish or catching more fish or any of those, but I want this to be a place where we can share stories. I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear what you guys do, and whether it's chasing trout in the backcountry or finding elk on some rugged mountain somewhere, whatever that looks like for you. Duck hunting, pheasant hunting, quail hunting, whatever it is, whatever takes you out into the world and helps you connect in this way. Man, I want to hear about it. And I hope that some of my articles can just find someone and just touch someone and hopefully inspire them to just go farther, to push deeper, discover more, whatever that looks like to anybody. I hope that is what this can become. And I hope that we can discover more of what's out there. So that's this week's article. We're going to keep diving into a new article every single week and just kind of working through, what I've posted so far. And then when I post a new one, it'll come up on here just the same. But I also just wanted to get, a little bit of Q&A going and everything. So I've got a question for you guys that hopefully, one of you can answer in a comment or a voice memo or whatever that looks like to you. I'd love to hear what you guys think. And then I've got questions I'll answer. This time I just asked, a couple of friends of mine. But hopefully next time it actually comes from one of you. So my question for you guys is just, man, when was the last experience you've had that just changed the way you see the outdoors? I think we all have some fun story or something. So I want to hear from one of you and let me know what that looks like for you. And then we'll read that on the podcast next time. So feel free to submit that answer to, Instagram, we're flying.trout.co, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube or we'll, just find a way to get to me and hopefully we'll put that on the air. Question for me that one of my friend asks for this first episode that I thought very fit in here really well was, what made you fall in love with trout specifically? And this is a really funny answer for me because I actually grew up in Oklahoma until I was about 8 years old. I lived out in the flatlands out there, and so it's bass central. Like bass are huge down there. Everybody fishes for bass, and that's just what you do. And so that's what I grew up with. And I loved bass fishing as a kid. We would go down to the ponds and cast a lure out. I also loved catfish. Catfishing was super fun. We used to do the whole noodling thing where you stick your hand in, wiggle your fingers, pull out catfish. And I loved that a lot. But man, when we moved to northern New Mexico when I was 8, and it was just some random summer day after we had lived there for like 8 months or something like that. And my dad just asked if I wanted to go fly fishing. And I was like, what in the world is fly fishing? I had no idea. But he took me to Walmart. We got waders and boots and everything. So just super cheap stuff. And then he taught me how to cast. And we went out to a river down there and fly fish for the first time. And I just remember being inside of the water. My boots were down there. My waders actually ripped, and a bunch of water came seeping into my waders, and I actually almost drowned because like my boot was filling up with waders. They were just those cheap, like, hip high ones. And so my dad had to pull me out of the water. But I just remember thinking like how cool it was to be a part of that and to be standing in a river instead of on the banks and to see these fish. And then after I caught my first fish, it was game over. And, man, just holding trout and that sort of thing. So I think it became less of, fishing for trout specifically about the species, and it became more about where trout are. And I think that was really it for me is, fishing for these wild trout in these crazy places in the middle of the mountains or way off in the backcountry or whatever that looked like. I just loved being a part of it. And so I think it was just getting outside and being in that aspect made me fall in love with trout fishing in a way that I don't think will ever disappear for me. So There it is. I mean, that's the first Flying Trout Podcast. So I just wanted to thank all of you for listening to the very first episode. I hope that there's a second, and I hope that this continues on, and hopefully we can turn it into something. So if you liked it, I mean, feel free, subscribe, share it with a fishing buddy, leave a quick review. That always helps, and it would really help me just get the word off the ground and get this thing moving. So if you'd like to support the project in any other ways, we're on Instagram at flying.trout.co. We have a YouTube channel, Flying Trout, where we'll be posting these podcasts along with, gear reviews, fishing, just all sorts of stuff. So check that out. And next time we're going to dive into another article. It's called Sometimes the Fish Win. It's another one that I wrote last year. And we'll just talk through strategies for, catching fish, and especially when fish tend to be, pickier and things like that. Hopefully we'll spend a little time talking about that. So till then, keep your line tight, your mind open, and your boots wet. We'll see you next time.